Believe it, achieve it, overcome your doubts, let go of the past, and unlock your full potential. Brian Tracy, best-selling author of Eat That Frog, and Christina Stein, PhD. Introduction. Adopt the achiever mindset. Trouble is the common denominator of living. It is the great equalizer. And Landers. Chambers. Perhaps the most important questions you ever ask and answer are, who am I? Why am I here? And what do I really want to do with my life? Your natural state is to be happy, healthy, joyous, and full of excitement at being alive. You should wake up each morning eager to start the day. You should feel wonderful about yourself and your relationships with the people in your life. As a fully functioning, mature adult, you should be doing things every day that move you upward and onward toward the realization of your full potential. You should be grateful for all your blessings in every area of your life. If, for any reason, you do not think and feel this way most of the time, it could mean that something is not right in the way you think, feel, or react to life. Your primary goal is to organize your life in such a way that you feel happy, joyous, and fulfilled most of the time, to shed negative or pessimistic thoughts, beliefs, and ideas that are holding you back and adopt an achiever's positive mindset. This book will teach you how to do that using the strategies that the world's most successful and happiest people use to achieve what they want. You are a masterpiece. Let me tell you a story. In the Accademia Gallery in Florence, Italy, stands Michelangelo's David, perhaps the most beautiful piece of sculpture in the world. People come from everywhere to stare at it in awe. The emotional power of the statue is almost overwhelming when you first enter into its presence. Where did it come from? Therein lies the story. In about 1501, Michelangelo was commissioned to create a statue for the Cathedral of Florence that would stand out from all other works of art. It was later placed in the Piazza della Signoria. He worked on this statue outside in the courtyard of the Opera del Duomo from 1501 to 1504. Complete secrecy. When this incredible work of art was unveiled at a large public ceremony attended by thousands, a gasp of awe arose from the crowd. They recognized immediately that this was perhaps the most beautiful statue ever created. Later, Michelangelo was asked how it was that he was able to sculpt something so beautiful. He explained that he was walking to his studio one morning, as he usually did. He happened to glance down a side street to where a huge piece of marble, brought down from the mountains, was lying, overgrown with grass and bushes. He had walked this street many times in the past, but this time he stopped and examined the huge block of marble, walking around it several times. Suddenly he realized that this was exactly the piece of marble that he had been seeking to create the statue that the Medicis wanted. He had it loaded up and brought to the courtyard. There he worked on it for the next 4 years to create the David. He said later, "I saw the David in the block of marble at the very beginning. My sole job from then on was to remove everything that was not the David until only perfection was left." In the same sense, you are like the David imprisoned in the marble. The great goal of your life is to remove all those fears, doubts, insecurities, negative emotions, and false beliefs that hold you back until all that remains is the very best person that you could possibly become. We are living today in one of the greatest times in all of human history. There are more opportunities and possibilities for you to accomplish more in every area in your life than have ever existed before, and if anything, it is only getting better year by year. More wealth has been created in the past 25 years than in the history of man on Earth, and the total wealth of the world is increasing and compounding at 4% per year or more. More people are becoming millionaires and billionaires today at a faster rate, going from rags to riches in one generation than at any other time in human history. People are living longer too. In the year 1900s, the average lifespan was 52 years. By 1935, it had risen to 62 years. Today, the average man can expect to live to 77 years and the average woman to 80 years. And these numbers are increasing every year. This means that if you take good care of your physical and mental health, you can quite comfortably beat the averages and live to be 85, 90, 95, or even older. Your job is to learn what you need to learn to live a long, happy life, and then apply what you learn so that you can fully participate in the greatest time for humans that has ever existed. Avoid a life of quiet desperation. Unfortunately, too many people, even in this world of abundance and opportunity, continue to live lives of quiet desperation. Instead of being happy, enthusiastic, and optimistic about their lives in the future, many people are still fearful, negative, insecure, worried, angry, and frustrated. They have mental blocks, fears, and frustrations, all rooted in previous experiences that hold them back from fulfilling their potential and becoming everything they're capable of becoming. Fortunately, we know more today about the negative emotions and fixed ideas that hold people back from realizing their full potential for success and achievement than we have ever known before. Sometimes a single idea or insight that leads to you seeing yourself and your life differently can transform you so completely that forever after you will feel wonderful about your life. Starting off with little, let me tell you my Brian's own story. I came from a poor home with no money and few opportunities. I didn't graduate from high school. I worked at laboring jobs for several years, washing dishes and digging ditches and wells. In my mid-20s, I got into sales, where I eventually succeeded, and then into sales management, where I succeeded even more. By the time I reached the age of 30, my life was turning around and I was on my way upward and onward. As my fortunes improved, I one day took a deep breath and bought a used Mercedes-Benz 450 SL, silver gray with blue leather upholstery, my dream car for many years. I was able to trade in my older car as the down payment and stretch the monthly payments over 5 years to make it work, but at last I had the car I had always wanted. When I took it out on the road and stepped on the accelerator, it would start moving faster and faster until I had to slow down to avoid getting a speeding ticket. After I'd driven this big, powerful car for a year, I took it in for servicing to a mechanic who specialized in Mercedes-Benz repairs. The power of one small change. When I went back to pick up my car, the mechanic, Hans, told me that he had found a problem in the carburetor. A previous mechanic had inserted a key part backward, thereby cutting down the amount of fuel going into the engine. Hans had replaced this part with a new valve and installed it properly. He said, "You will notice the difference. As it happened, I was already quite happy and content with my car. It seemed to drive very well for me and went as fast as I dared on the open highway. But this time when I got into the car, started it up, and just barely touched the gas pedal, the car exploded forward as though propelled by a rocket. I had to slam on the brakes to stop from crashing onto the street and into traffic. From then on, whenever I drove my Mercedes, I had to step on the accelerator very gently. A slight touch would cause that car to blast forward at such a speed that I would have to brake quickly to hold it back. And this improvement in performance was because of one small valve deep in the carburetor. One idea can hold you back. The point is that you are like a beautifully engineered Mercedes. But even if your life is moving along in a satisfactory way, you may have, deep within your thinking, a negative memory or block that can be holding you back from accomplishing something extraordinary with your life. When you identify this block and remove it, you will suddenly begin to make more progress in a few weeks or months than you might have made in several years. Imagine that you bought a brand new luxury car, beautifully built and engineered with precision in every detail. There was only one problem. Somehow, during the manufacturing process, a part had been installed incorrectly, leading to the brake on one front wheel locking and not turning when you stepped on the gas. Imagine that you got into your brand new, beautiful, expensive car, turned on the ignition, and stepped on the accelerator. If one front wheel was locked, what would happen? The car would spin around that front wheel, the back wheels would drive it forward, but it would just go in circles without making any progress. Here's the point. All you need is one unconscious block deep in your mind, a negative emotion or memory from an earlier painful experience, and your life can go around in circles indefinitely. No matter how hard you work on the outside, you will not seem to make the kind of progress in your finances, your family, your parenting, your career, or your health that you should be making. The harder you work on the outside, the less progress you will make, and the more dissatisfied you will feel. You will just go around in circles. Your greatest obstacles to happiness and success are usually contained within your self-limiting beliefs. Those negative beliefs that you have about yourself and your potential that are not based on fact, but that you have accepted nonetheless. The key to unlocking your full potential is to challenge these beliefs and replace them with new, life-enhancing beliefs. The truth will set you free in the pages ahead. You will learn how to identify those hidden blocks that hold you back. You will learn how to release vast reserves of energy, enthusiasm, and desire in a direction of your own choosing. You will learn proven ideas and insights that can change your life. Josh Billings, the 19th century humorist, once said, It isn't what a man knows that hurts him, it's what he knows that isn't true, especially about himself or herself. Much of the unhappiness and dissatisfaction in your world today, holding you back from greater success, happiness, achievement, and joy, is based on things that you think you know, but that are not necessarily true. When you change your self-limiting beliefs, you change your life. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Why people get stuck. Growth means change, and change involves risks, stepping from the known to the unknown. George Shin. You are a remarkable person with extraordinary potential. Your brain contains 100 billion cells, each connected to about 20,000 other cells. This means that the possible thoughts you can think, positive or negative, are greater than the number of molecules in the known universe. You are capable right now of living a wonderful life full of meaning and purpose, having a positive effect on numerous people. But before you can realize your full potential for personal greatness, you need to understand who you are and how you got to where you are today. There is no instruction manual for life, so create your own. Imagine that you had purchased the most sophisticated computer setup plus accessories that you could imagine. You brought it home, took it out of the box, and found to your amazement that there was no instruction manual. You had all this wonderful modern equipment that could perform many complicated tasks, but you did not know how to set it up or use it properly. You are born very much the same. You come into the world with a marvelous mind, loaded with untapped talents and abilities, with the potential to do extraordinary things with your life. But you have no instruction manual. You have to figure it all out for yourself. And this usually takes years, if not an entire lifetime. Have you ever wondered how you became the person you are today, with your special combination of thoughts, feelings, ideas, abilities, fears, hopes, ambitions, and aspirations? The magic of changing your thinking. Thomas Edison once said, "There are 3 types of people. There are those who think, there are those who think they think, and then there are those who would rather die than think." The great majority of people go through life without giving much thought to who they are and how they got to where they are today. As a result, life just happens to them, like a series of random events with no explanations and few connections between them. They take the first job that is offered to them, do what they are told, and then other people who offer them other jobs largely determine their career. They marry the person who happens to be standing there when they decide that they don't want to be single anymore. They spend their money on whatever appeals to them and invest in whatever somebody suggests to them. For the average person, life is like a bumper car at the carnival, continually being knocked in different directions with very little control. But the fact is that your world is largely created by the thoughts you think and the things that you do as a result of your thinking. When you improve your thinking, you improve your actions and your results. When you change your thinking, you change your life. A word from Christina. A powerful example of how changing your thinking can change your life comes from an experience with a client of mine. A 40-year-old man came to me because he realized he was tired of not feeling happy with his life. He had a good relationship with his wife and 2 happy kids, a well-paying job, and a supportive group of family and friends. He just felt like something was missing and he wasn't able to appreciate his situation. What I realized in working with him was that he had a general attitude of pessimism that was directly linked to his belief that he did not have control of his life. This thinking pattern was causing him to feel anxious and depressed about some unknown impending doom that he could not avoid. We broke his life down into separate parts and identified how and where he in fact was in control of his life. I gave him exercises to reinforce this new belief. He began practicing making decisions and taking actions that demonstrated that he was in control. Over time, he became more relaxed and easygoing. Eventually, his whole attitude changed completely. He became much more optimistic and positive about his life. The turning point for him was when he shifted his perception and chose to interpret things differently. He saw himself as being in control of his choices and decisions, and therefore in control of his future. His life changed completely. The mental laws. There is a series of mental laws and principles that have been discovered and rediscovered throughout history. These laws largely explain who you are and everything that happens to you. As success authority Napoleon Hill wrote, "One of the great secrets in life is never attempt to violate natural laws and win." The law of cause and effect, this is often referred to as the iron law of the universe. It was first explained by Aristotle in 350 BC at his academy outside Athens, and was called the Aristotelian principle of causality. at a time when everyone believed that the lives of mortals were determined by the gods playing on Mount Olympus and were nothing but a series of random events. Aristotle instead proclaimed that we live in a universe governed by order. He said that everything happens for a reason. Just because we do not know the reason, that does not mean a reason does not exist. The law of cause and effect says that for every effect or result in your life, there is a cause or causes. Nothing happens by chance. Even the most random events can be traced back to specific causes or factors. This law also says that if there is an effect that you desire, such as health, happiness, prosperity, or success, you can achieve that effect by creating the causes that bring them about. The easiest way to succeed greatly is to find someone else who has already achieved what you want to achieve and then do the same things this person did over and over until you get the same results. Exercise. Write down the names of 3 people you admire, whether for the people they are or for something they have accomplished. What is the quality you admire most about each one of them? How can you develop those qualities in yourself? Here's the first rule of the law of cause and effect. If you do what successful, happy people do over and over, there is nothing that can stop you from eventually getting the same results that they do. The second rule is this: if you don't do what successful, happy people do, nothing can help you. The world is full of people who are doing what unhappy, unsuccessful, frustrated people do, and then they are amazed that they get the same results. But this is not a matter of accident, random chance, or bad luck. It is simply a matter of law. If you eat healthy foods, exercise regularly, and take good care of your body, you will be fit and trim and have high levels of energy. And if you don't, you won't. Everyone understands and agrees with this. It is obvious. It is simply a matter of cause and effect. Your thought is creative. The most important application of the law of cause and effect is this: thoughts are causes and conditions are effects. Your thought is creative. You determine what happens to you by the thoughts you think, especially those thoughts that are charged with emotion, either positive or negative. Your thoughts are like the computer in a guided missile. They lead you unerringly to your target. Here's a critical point. Once you have initiated the cause, the effect takes place by itself. Once you have pushed the rock down the hill, it rolls by itself by the law of gravity. Once you have planted a positive or negative seed in your mind, either flowers or weeds will grow. You can control the cause, but the effect happens automatically, whether you want it to or not. A word from Christina. Often, when people first come to see me for therapy, I like to take time to explore a client's garden and find out which positive or negative thoughts, ideas, and beliefs have been planted and exist as a part of his or her personal story. Seeds are planted from the time a person is born by others, and then they continue to be planted by us. It is vital to identify what thoughts and ideas already exist so that the client can then decide which plants should remain in the garden and which should be removed because they are no longer true for him or her. From then on, the client's mental garden must be nurtured. It contains all the thoughts, ideas, and emotions that make up a person's inner life. Think about success. In a 22-year study at the University of Pennsylvania, 350,000 people were interviewed to find out what they thought about most of the time. It turned out that the top 10%, the happiest and most successful of this group, thought about 2 things most of the time: what they wanted and how to get it. They thought about their goals and the actions they could take to achieve them. Exercise. Decide upon something that you really want. Now, imagine that you have already achieved it. Describe what it's like to have attained your goal. How would your life be different if you achieved something that is important to you? The more that successful people thought about what they wanted and how to get it, the more ideas and insights came to them. These ideas motivated them to take even more actions, which moved them faster and faster toward their goals. When they achieved their goals, they felt happier, more motivated, and eager to set even bigger and more challenging goals. By thinking most of the time about what they wanted and how to get it, they put their lives into an upward spiral of success and achievement. And so can you. The foundation principle. The foundation principle of all religions, philosophy, metaphysics, psychology, and success is this: you become what you think about most of the time. When you think clear, definite thoughts about what you want, backed by the positive emotion of enthusiasm, you direct and channel your energies and your activities toward your goals. If your mind is a jumble of thoughts, as it is for most people, you will think about what you want on some occasions and what you don't want on others. You will think about what makes you happy and about what makes you unhappy. You will think about going to work and coming home. You will think about going to bed and getting up. You will think about fun and short-term excitement, watching television, listening to music, and socializing. Because you have no clear, specific goals, your life simply goes around in circles, sometimes for years. You eventually become what you think about most of the time, for good or ill. The law of belief. The law of belief says that whatever you believe with emotion becomes your reality. Your beliefs form a screen of prejudices through which you see your world. In other words, you do not see the world the way it is, but the way you are. William James, the 19th century Harvard University psychologist, said, "Belief creates the actual fact. You always think and act based on your basic beliefs, either positive or negative. If you have positive, constructive beliefs, you will make good decisions, take correct actions, and get good results. If you have negative, fearful, or angry beliefs, you will take the wrong actions or no actions at all and get negative results. This is simply a matter of law." Exercise. Get a notebook and keep it with you throughout the day. Become aware of how you perceive situations. When faced with a decision, do you highlight the positives or consider the negatives first? Track these thought patterns and make a conscious effort to view things optimistically. Then track how you feel overall about your day. Make sure you write this down. All beliefs are learned. Fortunately, all beliefs are learned. Everything that you are convinced of today has been taught to you somehow and by someone. If you have positive, life-affirming beliefs, you will have a happy, healthy life. You will be popular and get along well with other people. If you have negative, destructive beliefs, you will be doubtful, fearful, suspicious, negative, and in constant conflict with other people in your life. The starting point of personal transformation is to question your self-limiting beliefs. Any beliefs you have that suggest you are limited in talent, ability, personality, or opportunity are usually not true. They are limitations that you have imposed upon yourself by believing in them. The minute you stop believing that you are limited in any way, your whole life opens up like a sunrise. A word from Christina. I was recently working with a woman who would experience tremendous anxiety each time she anticipated having a conversation with a particular coworker. She claimed she felt small and intimidated by this coworker and had a hard time speaking up for what she needed or wanted in the presence of this other person. I had her imagine herself feeling really small, insecure, and intimidated, and then I asked her to associate those feelings with an animal. She chose a kitten because they are often shy and timid. I then asked her to think of a time when she felt grounded, confident, and powerful. I asked her to associate those feelings with an animal. She chose a tiger because tigers are powerful and dangerous. I then had her practice imagining herself as a kitten and then a tiger. We did this several times until she felt she could easily connect to the feelings she had associated with each animal. She began practicing being her tiger self at work and found that the anxiety of talking with her coworker completely went away. I have conducted this particular exercise with several clients, and every time the client came back to me with a success story. It seems unusual, but taking your self-limiting beliefs and creating a concrete object or animal to represent them allows you to externalize them and become more aware of what mindset you are operating from. Being able to identify when you're feeling insecure and consciously shift yourself to come from a confident, empowered place gives you a sense of control and boosts your self-esteem. Exercise. What are 3 things that you want to do but think you can't do? Why can't you do them? Who tells you that you can't do those things? Who believes you can? Have you ever tried to do these things, or are you just assuming you can't? The law of expectations. The law of expectations has been discussed frequently over the years. It is used to explain many of the things that happen in society, including virtually every decision made on the stock market and in the economy. It says, whatever you expect with confidence becomes your own self-fulfilling prophecy. If you expect to be happy and successful, you probably will be. If you expect to be popular and liked by others, you will behave in such a way that makes it come true. If you expect to have a wonderful life, contribute to society, and be respected by your family, friends, and colleagues, that becomes your self-fulfilling prophecy as well. Perhaps the best attitude you can develop is one of positive expectancy, in which you go through life confidently expecting that everything will work out for the best. And you will seldom be disappointed. Most unhappy people have an attitude of negative expectancy. They expect to be disappointed, they expect to be cheated or overcharged. they expect to be unpopular or disliked, and their expectations come true as well. You can decide. The good news is that you can manufacture your own expectations, either positive or negative. The choice is yours. The only thing you can control in the whole world is the way you think. If you take control of your thinking, you take complete control of your emotions, your actions, and your destiny. Your expectations are largely formed by your beliefs. If you believe yourself to be a good person, you will expect to be treated in a positive way, and people will consciously and unconsciously respond to your expectations, whether they know them or not. The law of attraction, this law has been discussed for more than 5,000 years. Popular literature suggests that based on this law, you can have everything you want in life if you visualize and think happy thoughts. Some people think that by the law of attraction, whatever you want will inevitably be drawn into your life. This explanation is partially true. It is true that your mind is a living magnet. You inevitably attract to your life the people, resources, and experiences that are emotionalized or in harmony with your dominant thoughts. Emotion is the key to understanding this law. Your emotions, positive or negative, are like an electrical charge that influences your magnetism and attracts you to whatever you are putting out. The law of attraction in action. What this law means for you is that when you are absolutely clear about something you want, you set up a force field of energy that attracts it to you and attracts you to it. The essential component for this law to work is belief or faith. The slightest bit of doubt or negativity regarding what you want will sabotage the process of attracting it into your life. Exercise. Imagine you are going to buy a new car. Decide what car you would like to have and the color. For the next few days, observe how often you see that car. You will notice it everywhere. The law of sympathetic resonance. There is also a sub-law, the law of sympathetic resonance. By this law, if you strike a string on a piano on one side of the room and then walk across to a piano on the other side of the room, the same string will be vibrating as the one you struck on the first piano. In the same way, you will often meet a person with whom you have a sympathetic resonance from the first moment. You have probably experienced this in your own life. Khalil Gibran wrote in his book, The Prophet, "In love, there must be an instant communication at the first moment of meeting, or it will never happen." Many people are attracted to the person who becomes their husband or wife by sympathetic resonance. Their eyes meet across a crowded room, and like magnets, they are drawn toward each other. This experience explains why married couples can almost always remember their first moment of meeting. The law of vibration. Another sub-law of the law of attraction is the law of vibration, which says that the entire universe is energy in motion, with every substance vibrating at different frequencies. Your thoughts also vibrate at a level that is so fine that your thought waves can travel through any substance and over long distances instantaneously. Throughout your life, you will have experiences like this. You are talking about a friend who lives on the other side of the country, someone you have not seen for years. In the midst of your conversation, the phone will ring, and there will be your friend on the other end of the line. You will say with surprise, "We were just talking about you." This is another example of the law of attraction, based on the laws of sympathetic resonance and vibration. The law of repulsion. The opposite of the law of attraction is the law of repulsion. When you think negative, worried thoughts about money, about how little you have and how much everything costs, you create a negative force field of energy that drives money and opportunities out of your life. This is the primary reason why many people remain poor all their lives. Perhaps the worst thing you can do if you want to be financially successful is to criticize other people who are doing well, people who are earning more than you are. This behavior is usually based on envy and resentment, two of the worst negative emotions. It drives all hope of success out of your life. But when you admire and look up to successful people, you create that force field of energy that draws successful people to you, which creates opportunities for you to be successful as well. The law of correspondence. My favorite law of all is the law of correspondence, which says, your outer world is a mirror image reflection of your inner world. You create the mental equivalent of what you want to see, experience, or enjoy on the inside, and then it materializes like a reflection in your life. This is why it says in the Bible, as within, so without. Napoleon Hill wrote that in order to become financially independent, you must develop a prosperity consciousness. Once you have this prosperity consciousness, you will begin to see all kinds of opportunities around you to earn more money. You will meet new people, read relevant books or articles, have doors open for you, and come up with great ideas that move you toward the prosperity you desire. Unfortunately, Most people have a poverty consciousness. They worry about money all the time. They worry about how much everything costs and think it costs too much. They are guarded with their money and suspicious of the intentions of other people. Often because of childhood conditioning, their attitude is, I can't afford it. Good reflections by the law of correspondence. Your outer world of relationships will be a mirror image reflection of how you feel about yourself inside. The more you like and respect yourself, the more you will like and respect others. The more you like and respect others, the more they will like you right back, and the better your relationships will be in all areas of your life. Your outer world of health will be a reflection of your inner world of attitudes toward diet, exercise, and personal well-being. If you think of yourself in a fit, thin, healthy way on the inside, you will soon be a fit, thin, healthy person on the outside. Your outer world of success in your career will be a reflection of your internal preparation and ability to use your knowledge and skill. This will quickly be reflected in your ability to achieve better and faster results, which will move you upward and onward in your career. Because of these laws, you do become what you think about most of the time. Because of these laws, when you change your thinking, you change your life. And there is no other way. The world is full of unhappy, frustrated people who are convinced that they can change the outer aspects of their lives while leaving their inner attitudes of mind unchanged. This is simply not possible. The discovery of the self-concept, where do your thoughts, feelings, beliefs, expectations, and attitudes come from? The discovery of the self-concept in the 20th century is the single greatest breakthrough in the understanding and unlocking of human potential that has ever been made. Self-concept psychology says that each child comes into the world with no self-concept at all. The philosopher David Hume called this a tabula rasa, or a blank slate. He said that each person begins with no thoughts, feelings, beliefs, or opinions. Everything you know to be true about yourself and your world has been taught and learned, both directly and indirectly, from infancy onward. Of course, each child has a certain type of temperament, which is evident early in life. Each child has latent talents and abilities that can be developed, or that go undeveloped as the child ages into adulthood. But in terms of personality attributes, each child is born with unlimited potential. The newborn child. The child comes into the world completely defenseless and unable to provide for him or herself in any way. From the moment of birth onward, the child needs an unbroken flow of unconditional love for healthy development. Like roses need rain, the child's worldview, safe or unsafe, is largely shaped by the way the child is treated in the first 3 to 5 years of life. When parents give the child a continuous flow of love, approval, touch, warmth, and security, the child develops the belief that he or she lives in a safe world. Be spontaneous and uninhibited. The child is born with only 2 fears, the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. All other fears have to be taught to the child through repetition, usually by her parents, as she is growing up. Children come into the world with 2 common characteristics. They are uninhibited and spontaneous. Because they are unafraid of anything, they laugh, cry, wet or dirty their diapers, throw their arms around, make loud or strange noises, and do whatever they feel like. Because children are spontaneous, they aren't trapped by worries about what others might think or feel about their actions or decisions. They do or say exactly what they think or feel in the moment, without any concern for whether it is something they should or shouldn't be doing based on what others believe. They do what is right for them. This is your natural birthright, to be both spontaneous and uninhibited when it comes to you and your dreams. When you're at your very best, in a safe environment, with people you like and trust, sometimes after a glass or 2 of wine, you revert to the normal childhood condition of fearlessness, not worrying about anything. You revert to being completely spontaneous, expressing yourself naturally and openly without being overly concerned about what people think or feel or how they will react. The 2 major negative habit patterns. Because of mistakes that parents make, especially destructive criticism and physical punishment, children begin to learn negative habit patterns early in life. These negative habit patterns then drop into a child's subconscious mind and determine his or her personality throughout life. In psychology, there are 2 major negative habit patterns, the inhibitive negative habit pattern and the compulsive negative habit pattern. We call them the fear of failure and the fear of rejection. They are the primary obstacles to success and happiness for you or for anyone. The first of these, the fear of failure, the inhibitive negative habit pattern, is learned when the child is shouted at or physically punished for trying or getting into new things. Because children are naturally curious, they want to touch, taste, feel, and experience everything in their little worlds. They are completely fearless. They will grab sharp knives, stand on the edges of buildings, and run into traffic. Parents have to spend the first few years of their children's lives stopping them from killing themselves accidentally. In exasperation, parents say things like, "Stop," and "Don't touch that," and "Get away from there." Even worse, parents will often physically punish children, spanking them in an attempt to discourage them from experimenting and trying new things. "I can't do it." This soon creates within the child the fear of failure, which is expressed in the thought and feeling of, "I can't." When the child has been destructively criticized or physically punished in early childhood, this fear of failure can then continue into adult life. Every time the adult is faced with a new opportunity to try something new or different, the automatic reaction usually experienced in the solar plexus will be, "I can't." For the rest of the person's life, the fear of failure will have a major influence in determining what he does, where he goes, the jobs he chooses to work at, the social circle he builds around himself, the way he raises his children and treats his spouse, and almost every other factor in life. The fear of failure hangs over the adult like a black cloud. Many adults react to the possibility of failure exactly like a child who's afraid of getting a spanking for doing something wrong. Remember the example about the garden? The idea of "I can't" is a weed that needs to be plucked from the garden. That automatic reaction does not mean that the idea is true. It means that it is a thought pattern that has become a habit, and habits can be changed. Through awareness and decisiveness, you can develop new, better ways of thinking and reacting. You can eventually become a completely positive person. The fear of rejection. The second block to fulfilling your potential is the compulsive negative habit pattern, the fear of rejection or criticism. This habit pattern is learned when the child becomes the victim of conditional love. In an attempt to control and manipulate their children, parents often make their love conditional on the child doing exactly what the parent wants when the parent wants it, in the way that the parent expects it. The growing child, who is dependent on the love of her parents for her sense of security, soon learns that she is safe only when she does what mommy and daddy want. She begins to think, if I don't do what they want, they won't love me and I won't be safe. Since the child's need for security is the overwhelming need in the formative years of her life, she soon begins to conform her behavior to the demands of her parents. This is expressed in the thought, I have to do what mommy and daddy want. I have to do what pleases them. I have to do what they want me to do. The pattern continues when the child grows up. The inhibitive negative habit pattern, the fear of rejection and criticism, triggered by the threatened withdrawal of love or approval, causes her to become hypersensitive to the opinions of others. In extreme cases, the adult cannot make a decision without being sure that the other people in her life approve completely of the decision. She always has to get approval from someone or several people before she can even buy an article of clothing or get a new car. She feels extremely uncomfortable at the very idea of making any kind of a decision in which someone else might disapprove of or criticize her. A word from Christina. The fear of rejection and the desire for a happy relationship with others is a major theme in therapy. I once worked with a young lady in her 20s who was unable to make a decision because she was so afraid it would be the wrong decision and that someone would disapprove. The idea of making any choice caused her extreme anxiety. As a result, she found herself struggling in her relationships. She would be so sensitive to the likes and dislikes of the other person that she could never make an independent choice. The problem was that she was attempting to be what she thought the other person wanted her to be. Inevitably, the relationship would fall apart because there was no genuineness or authenticity between the two of them. Over time, she learned that in order to have an authentic connection with another person, she needed to have an authentic relationship with her true self. Her fear of rejection was deeply programmed into her. She could not accept that she was a genuinely worthwhile and important person. I encouraged her to embrace the idea that she wanted to be with someone who liked her just the way she was, not a false version of her. She embraced this idea wholeheartedly. She began dating new people and remaining as authentic to her true self as possible. She eventually found herself in a relationship with a great guy who really likes and respects her. They have now been together for more than 6 months. She still struggles with asserting her own likes and dislikes, but she is much more comfortable with the idea that if she makes a choice and it doesn't work out, she can just make a different choice next time. The compulsive negative habit pattern is felt in the form of stress or pain down the back of the body. When a person feels, I have to, his or her muscles tense up, starting at the neck and moving down the back. As an adult, when you feel under pressure to perform, to please someone else, to get a job done on time, or your boss will be angry with you, you may start to experience pain all up and down your spine. But when the job is complete, the pain disappears. Love deficiency. In some third world countries, children were brought up in areas where there was insufficient calcium in their diet. Because of this calcium deficiency, the bones of their legs never formed correctly, leaving them bow-legged, unable to straighten their lower limbs fully. A child who has experienced calcium deficiency in infancy can be clearly recognized in adulthood by his or her bowed legs. But a child who has been raised with a love deficiency does not show it so obviously on the outside. It is only when you interact with unhappy, frustrated, angry, or dishonest people that you realize there is something wrong. Virtually all adult problems, and teenage problems as well, can be traced back to the withholding or withdrawal of love in the early years of childhood. When you add destructive criticism to the mix, very often you produce an adult who has both of the negative habit patterns, the inhibitive and the compulsive, who goes through life saying, "I can't, but I have to," or "I have to, but I can't." Virtually all negative emotions that cause a person to get stuck later in life are planted like seeds by parental criticism or neglect in the early years of life when the child is highly sensitive, completely defenseless, and unaware of what is going on. Whenever you see a dysfunctional adult, you see the results of a dysfunctional childhood, changing your self-concept. Once you are aware of the origin of your negative emotions, how do you go back into your subconscious mind and correct them? This brings us to the role that your self-concept plays in your thinking and feeling. Your self-concept is made up of the bundle of beliefs, primarily from others, that you have taken in about yourself and accepted as true. These beliefs form your reality, whether they are based on fact or not. You will always act on the outside consistent with what you believe about yourself on the inside. Your self-concept is made up of 3 parts: your self-ideal, your self-image, and your self-esteem. Let us examine each of these in order. Your self-ideal is made up of the values, virtues, and qualities that you most admire in yourself and in other people. It is a composite of the person you would most like to be sometime in the future. Your self-ideal is also shaped by your hopes, dreams, plans, goals, and aspirations. The more things you want to be, do, and have in your life, the more powerful an influence your self-ideal will have on your behavior. Successful, happy people are very clear about their goals and ideals. They take a good deal of time to think about what they most value, stand for, and believe in. They set integrity as the organizing principle of their lives and continually strive to become better, to become more and more of what they are truly capable of becoming. Unhappy, unsuccessful people have either an unclear self-ideal or no self-ideal at all. They don't stand for or believe in anything in particular. They will compromise their values and principles for the slightest advantage or benefit. They are never happy. Clarify your values. One of the exercises that we do in our seminars is called values clarification. We help individual participants to decide upon the most important values in their lives and then develop plans to live consistent with those values every hour of every day. Once people are clear about their values and their ideal selves, their whole life begins to change. A person with very clear ideals engages in specific behaviors, cause and effect, apparently changes his beliefs, his reality, alters his expectations more positive, and begins to attract into his life more of the people and resources that are in harmony with the ideal of the best person he can be. Your self-image. The second part of your self-concept is your self-image. This is often called your inner mirror. It's what you look into prior to any event in your life to determine how you should behave. Happy people have positive self-images. When they visualize and imagine themselves in any part of their work or personal lives, they see themselves as confident, competent, well-liked, and effective. In self-image psychology, they say, the person you see is the person you will be. All improvement in your life begins with an improvement in your mental pictures, and your mental pictures are completely under your control. You can change your self-image by feeding your mind with positive pictures of the person you would like to be, performing the way you would like to perform. The work done in self-image psychology by Maxwell Maltz in the 1950s transformed the lives of thousands of people. They learned that when they visualized themselves as the best they could be, their subconscious mind altered their body language, tone of voice, and personality to be consistent with the new mental picture. When you are mentally healthy, there's always a dynamic tension between the way you see yourself today, your self-image, and your self-ideal, the way you want to be in the future. When you have a clear self-ideal, it becomes easier to continually improve your thoughts, behaviors, and activities so that they are more and more in harmony with the very best person you can be. Your self-esteem. The third and most important part of your self-concept is your self-esteem. It is the foundation of your personality. It is the reactor core of your emotional power generator. It determines the quality, energy, and strength of your personality. The best definition of self-esteem is how much you like yourself. The more you like yourself, the better you will do in every part of your life. The more you like yourself, the more you will like others. The more you like others, the more they will like you right back, and the more they will want to buy from you, be associated with you, be married to you, and have you as their friend. Throughout your life, you will find that people with the highest self-esteem have the most positive personalities and are the most popular wherever they go. There seems to be a direct correlation among self-esteem, success, and happiness in every area of life. Fast reaction time here is the great breakthrough. Just as you become what you think about most of the time, you become what you say to yourself most of the time as well. The majority of your emotions are determined by the way you talk to yourself throughout the day. When you talk to yourself in a strong, positive way, using positive affirmations about the person you would ideally like to be. These commands are accepted by your subconscious mind and immediately influence your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. The most powerful words you can use to build your self-esteem are, I like myself. Each time you say, I like myself, your self-esteem goes up. As your self-esteem goes up, your self-image improves. As your self-image improves, you feel yourself moving more and more toward becoming the ideal person you want to be. Your whole personality comes into balance. You begin to evolve and grow in a positive way. Take control of your evolution as a person wonderfully enough, no matter what happened to you in early childhood to lower your self-esteem or hurt your self-image. As an adult, you can take complete control of the evolution of your own personality. You can make a decision right now to become a completely positive person. You begin today by repeating the magic words, I like myself, over and over again, 10, 20, 50 times per day. Whenever you feel unhappy, worried, or concerned for any reason, you can cancel out the negative emotions by repeating, I like myself, until the negative feelings disappear. No matter what happened to you as a child, you can go back as an adult and reprogram your subconscious feelings about yourself by building your self-esteem higher and higher. The more you like yourself, the better you will do in every area of your life. The more you like yourself, the happier and more confident you become. The more you like yourself, the more optimistic and cheerful you will be. The more you like yourself, the more your life will change for the better. Exercise. Write a list of 3 qualities you like most about yourself. For example, why are you a good person? What are your best qualities? What makes you a valuable friend, spouse, or parent? Whenever you think about these qualities, you can look at yourself in the mirror and say with conviction, I like myself. Chapter 2. What holds you back? The very greatest things, great thoughts, discoveries, inventions, have usually been nurtured in hardship, often pondered over in sorrow, and at length established with difficulty. Difficulty. Samuel smiles. Each child comes into the world as pure potential, with the ability to become an extraordinary person, do wonderful things, and enjoy high levels of health, happiness, and prosperity throughout life. People today can live longer and better than has ever been possible for the human race, and with modern advances in medicine and knowledge, lifespans are increasing every year. As mentioned in the previous chapter, children are born as complete optimists, fearless and uninhibited, excited and curious and eager to touch, taste, smell, and feel everything around them. Have you ever seen a negative baby? Mistakes parents make early in life, however, as a result of mistakes that parents make, children soon begin to experience destructive criticism and lack of love. These 2 behaviors, either alone or together, are the primary sources of unhappiness and dysfunction in adult life. Destructive criticism is the single biggest enemy of human potential. One could argue that its effects are even worse than those of cancer or heart disease. While those diseases affect the physical body and sometimes can lead to the deterioration and death of the individual, destructive criticism kills the soul of the person early on but leaves the body walking around. When parents attempt to control their children by giving them love and then taking it away as a form of punishment, they plant the seeds of deep insecurity within their children. This insecurity manifests in a plethora of emotional and mental problems, from feelings of self-doubt, anxiety, worry, and a strong sense of inadequacy and being undeserving of anything good in life, to lack of motivation, fear of not living up to others' expectations, striving for perfection, and inability to confront issues or deal with conflict effectively. The two main negative emotions. There are many negative emotions, but almost all of them are rooted in the big two: fear of failure and fear of rejection. Fear of failure is manifested in adult life as a fear of loss. People who have been destructively criticized as children fear the loss of money, loss of health, loss of position, loss of security, and loss of the love of other people. No matter how much they achieve in their careers, they are haunted by a fear of having it all taken away and having to start over again with nothing. The fear of rejection is experienced as a fear of criticism that can become so extreme that the individual becomes hypersensitive to the thoughts, words, opinions, and even glances of other people, including strangers. In addition, people feel a fear of disapproval, of not being liked by others whom they are eager to impress. Fear of rejection leads to a fear of the loss of respect of people whose respect is important to us. People with this fear are afraid of embarrassment or ridicule of any kind, especially in the presence of others. The fear of rejection is the root cause of the fear of public speaking, rated ahead of the fear of death among life's major fears. A word from Christina. I struggle with the fear of public speaking and recently learned an incredibly valuable concept, thanks to my father, Brian. When you are preparing to talk or present to others and the performance anxiety begins to kick in, the key is to assure yourself that your audience, big or small, wants you to succeed to give a good presentation. They are not there to judge you. They are there to learn, listen, or be entertained. Imagine you had no limitations. We often ask two questions in our seminars to help people see the role that fear plays in their lives and decisions. First, we ask, imagine that you were financially independent today and had all the money that you could ever spend for the rest of your life. What would you do differently? What would you get into or out of? What would you start doing or stop doing? This question can be a real eye-opener. There are many situations in your life that you would change immediately if you had no fear of poverty at all. If you had all the money that you wanted or needed, you would probably make dramatic changes in your life. People design their lives to compensate for their fears. They accept lower-level jobs than they are truly capable of in exchange for security. They stay in unhappy relationships rather than risk being alone or unattached. They choose friends who are passive and uncritical so that they can be sure of never being criticized, embarrassed, or rejected. A word from Christina. Fear of not having or being enough is one of the most common obstacles that hold people back from moving forward, especially professionally. I recently attended a professional training workshop. One of the activities was to identify one thing that holds you back from moving forward. Of this group, 90% of the attendees felt that they needed more training, more experience, or more knowledge to be more successful in their field. Prior to the activity, we had each explained our level of professional success. I was impressed with how accomplished each person was. It was surprising to hear that even those with the most impressive resumes doubted themselves. The great question. The second question we ask is, what one great thing would you dare to dream if you knew you could not fail? If you were absolutely guaranteed success in anything, large or small, long-term or short-term, what one big, exciting, challenging goal would you set for yourself? This question helps people to identify the fears that are holding them back. If you were completely guaranteed success in any one thing that you attempted, you would probably commit to your heart's desire, the one great, wonderful thing that you were born to do with your life. The hierarchy of needs, Abraham Maslow, the great psychologist, turned the study of psychology upside down in the late 1940s. Instead of doing what everyone else did, which was to study unhappy people and attempt to discern the reasons for their problems, Maslow focused on happy people and the characteristics they shared. Among other insights, Maslow developed his famous hierarchy of needs. He concluded that each person has a series of 5 basic needs that must be satisfied in order for the individual to realize her full potential. At the base of the pyramid of his hierarchy of needs is the need for survival, the preservation of life, the most powerful drive in human nature. Once a person is assured of her survival, she graduates to the next level of needs, those for safety and security. These needs are satisfied when the individual has enough food, clothing, shelter, and money so that none of these needs are pressing. Once the individual has satisfied her needs for survival and safety and security, she progresses to the third level of the hierarchy, the satisfaction of belongingness needs. Each person has a deep desire to be a part of a group of people, to be recognized and accepted by them. This is as much a need for an individual as the need for food, drink, and shelter. Depending on others, realizing your need for human contact and belonging is important in understanding how to move forward when you feel stuck. As babies, we are completely vulnerable and depend on our primary caregiver for physical survival and emotional comfort. As we become adults, we transfer our attachments to our peers or significant others, and we depend on those relationships for our emotional health and even our survival. The reason fear of rejection is so powerful is that the idea of being completely alone feels emotionally life-threatening. We depend so deeply on the acceptance and support of others that we learn to suppress our true needs to keep our friends and associates around. A word from Christina. I worked with a young man who had learned that in order to keep his parents happy and attentive to him, he had to suppress his own needs and maintain a cooperative, easygoing manner. He had discovered that when he had strong emotions, positive or negative, his parents did not respond well to him. They began to withdraw from him. He soon learned to suppress his feelings and reactions so as not to lose the approval of his parents. When he grew up, he became so disconnected from his true feelings that he experienced low self-esteem and self-confidence both personally and professionally. It took him a long time to learn that his personal wants and needs were just as valid as those of anyone else, including his parents. Deficiency needs versus being needs. These first three types of needs, survival, safety, and security, and belongingness, are defined as deficiency needs. In their absence, the individual becomes preoccupied with satisfying them to the exclusion of everything else. But once these needs are satisfied, the individual moves upward toward the satisfaction of higher order needs, or being needs, the fourth of which is for self-esteem. Almost everything that we do in life today is either to achieve feelings of self-esteem or to compensate for its lack. Your self-esteem, how much you like yourself, lies at the core of your personality and largely determines the quality of your emotional life. In Maslow's hierarchy, once self-esteem needs are satisfied, the individual moves to the highest level, the satisfaction of self-actualization needs. Self-actualization, as defined by Abraham Maslow, is to become everything that one is capable of becoming. Higher needs later, Maslow concluded that there are two even higher needs, which emerge naturally once a person has satisfied the needs for survival, safety, belongingness, self-esteem, and self-actualization. These are the needs for truth and beauty. Throughout the history of human civilization, you see examples in which wealthy individuals and societies invested enormous amounts of money and labor in philosophy, literature, poetry, and the search for truth. They then invested substantially in art, architecture, jewelry, public buildings, and beautiful homes and castles, all in the search for beauty, the fully functioning person. The psychiatrist William Glasser defined a person who has achieved the higher levels of mental and emotional development as a fully functioning person, FFP. This is a person who enjoys high levels of self-esteem and personal contentment and who is completely relaxed with himself and the world. The most identifiable characteristic of a fully functioning person seems to be that he is completely non-defensive. The FFP does not feel that he has to justify or explain himself to anyone for anything. He lives his life completely in accordance with his own thoughts, feelings, values, and ideals. He is warm, gracious, happy, and charming, and is called a fully mature, fully integrated personality. To reach this level is one of our most important goals. What holds us back? The question is, what keeps people at the lower levels of need satisfaction or dissatisfaction? What causes people to be preoccupied with survival, safety, and security, and belongingness needs? The answer is negative emotions. Because of destructive criticism and lack of love, children begin to develop negative emotions at an early age. As they become adults, these emotions can become more and more intense and generate additional negative emotions of various kinds. The main negative emotions that people experience are those of fear, doubt, worry, envy, jealousy, resentment, undeservingness, and feelings of inadequacy, especially in comparison to others. Fear, doubt, and worry arise when the child is continually criticized whenever she makes a mistake of any kind. Even if she accomplishes something worthwhile, it is never enough to satisfy her parents. In addition, the parents seldom express love or approval, or if they do, they immediately withdraw it if they feel that the child is failing to please them in some way. Becoming a fully functioning person. Your goal is to become a fully functioning person, but most of us are not there yet. As a result, most people look to others to validate the decisions they make. Often when someone else has a different opinion or makes decisions contrary to their own, indecisive people can feel insecure or threatened. They ask, which choice is best? A word from Christina. John is a middle-aged man who struggles to be decisive and proactive in his life. He has a very close family and is one of 3 children. His relationships with his family are important to him. He often seeks the opinion of his mother and brother. After working with John for several months, I realized that every time he sought advice from his mother, his anxiety levels would increase. If he agreed with her and did what she said, then she would be supportive and loving. However, if he did or even wanted to do something she didn't approve of, she would stop talking to him for a couple of weeks. He felt paralyzed, unable to move forward in his life because he knew it meant upsetting his mother and feeling rejected by his family. I have worked with many clients who have the same experience. What holds them back and keeps them stuck is the fear that if they did something new or different, they could lose the love or approval of an important person in their lives. As a result, they can remain stuck in the same place for years. Envy and resentment. Envy and resentment are negative emotions that arise from deep feelings of inadequacy and inferiority. They seem to go together, arm in arm, like twins. Envy is one of the worst of the negative emotions. It is the only one of the 7 deadly sins for which there is no payoff for the envious person. He or she can envy another person to the point of being furious inside, but it has no effect on the target, and it gives no benefit or pleasure to the person obsessed with the envy. Envy is usually learned from one or both parents as the result of being continually told that people who are more successful or happy are fundamentally bad or dishonest. In our society today, the emotion of envy drives most social and political policy, both nationally and internationally. Envy is always outwardly directed at someone, the enemy, who is doing better than the person experiencing the feeling of envy. Because this person is considered bad, he or she must be brought down or punished in some way. The unfortunate thing about envy is that it can never be satisfied. If anything, it grows and becomes worse over time, and it causes far more damage to the person experiencing the emotion than to the person or group at whom it is aimed. Admiration is positive. Admiring something that another person has attained or accomplished is not the same as envy. It is important to want things that other people have because it motivates you to accomplish the same. Because of the mental laws of attraction and repulsion, the worst thing you can do to yourself is to envy or resent others. When you do, you set up a force field of negative energy that drives out and repels success and happiness from your own life. The misunderstanding of this basic concept is a major reason for frustration, discontent, and underachievement for many people. Resentment requires an enemy. The twin sister of envy is resentment. Like envy, resentment arises when someone feels that another person has achieved or is enjoying a better life situation than one's own. Certain political philosophies absolutely require an enemy, someone at whom envy and resentment can be directed in order to justify the political policies or platform of the party leaders. Don't allow yourself to be trapped into the emotional quicksand of resentment because of what others say, jealousy, and low self-esteem. The negative emotion of jealousy comes from low self-esteem, a feeling of unworthiness and inadequacy, the idea that one could never really be loved by someone else. A little jealousy may be normal and natural, especially while growing up and comparing ourselves to those who seem to be more attractive or doing better than we are. But too much jealousy becomes what Shakespeare called the green-eyed monster. It can be terribly destructive to the person experiencing the jealousy, leading to unreasonable behavior and ruined relationships. All emotions, especially those that are negative, distort evaluations. A person in the grip of a negative emotion is incapable of thinking clearly or rationally. The more intense the negative emotion, the more the sufferer becomes detached from reality and is incapable of reasoning clearly. He or she then talks and acts in a way that is often unexplainable and completely destructive. We all have our crazy times. In 1982, a New York writer, Abigail Trafford, who had been through a particularly bitter 2-year divorce, wrote a book called Crazy Time. In this book, she explained how the emotionally chaotic 2 years of her divorce caused her to behave in ways that she could barely recognize when the divorce was over and she had returned to normal. She felt that she had been insane for the entire time because of the intensity of the negativity she was feeling. Emotions distort evaluations. Big life changes such as a new job, moving, the birth of a child, and the end of a relationship can all result in short periods of feeling overwhelmed and irrational. Remember Maslow's hierarchy? Humans need to feel safe and secure, or they become consumed with satisfying that need. When we feel insecure for any reason, all we can think of is regaining our security wherever it is lacking, similar to thinking constantly about food when we are hungry. A word from Christina. When I am working with clients who are going through a transition of some kind, we talk about the idea that they will probably feel anxious and insecure until they have gone through the change and found themselves grounded again. Having a baby is a good example. I remember how, after the birth of each child, I have 3, life seems chaotic and overwhelming. This is quite normal and natural. It's almost always a stressful and emotional time for the family. Eventually, however, everything smooths out and returns to normal. 5 factors that create negative emotions. There are 5 major factors that cause people to create negative emotions and hold on to them. To free yourself from negative emotions, you must recognize where they come from so that you can get rid of them, or even stop them from developing in the first place. 1. Justification. The first cause of negative emotions is justification. Negative emotions cannot exist unless you can explain to yourself and others why you are entitled to feel how you do about this person or situation. When you are discussing the negative situation, you become preoccupied with justifying your negativity on a variety of grounds. Often you drive along talking to yourself, making your case, and arguing vehemently with people who are not there. The more you justify yourself and convince yourself that the other person is wrong and evil, that you are pure and innocent, and that you are therefore entitled to feel the way you do, the angrier and more upset you become. 2. Identification. The second requirement for negative emotions to exist is identification. This means that you take things personally. You see what has happened as a personal attack and feel that you have been taken advantage of in some way. Another term for this is what behavioral scientists call the fundamental attribution error. This means that when someone else does something that hurts or offends us, we blame his or her behavior on some character deficiency. If, however, we do something to offend or inconvenience another person, we excuse it away as an accident or blame it on outside forces. If you cannot personally identify with a negative person or situation, it is difficult to generate any emotion, positive or negative, about that person. For example, if you read in the paper that 1,000 people, men, women, and children, had been washed away and tragically drowned in a flood in northern China, you might feel a little sadness. But then you would flip the page to the next subject with no emotion at all, because you do not know any of the people affected or even know about that part of the world. You do not identify with the tragedy. As a result, you experience no negative emotions when you learn about it. 3. Hypersensitivity. The third cause of negative emotions is hypersensitivity to the thoughts, opinions, or attitudes of others toward you. When a person has been raised with destructive criticism and lack of love, he can develop deep feelings of inferiority and inadequacy. These feelings will manifest as an over-concern about the actions, reactions, and treatment that he experiences from other people. One positive word or comment of approval from another can cause him to be elated. One negative glance or comment can make him feel unhappy. Truly hypersensitive people often see slights and disapproval where none exist. They tend to imagine that other people are thinking and talking about them behind their backs. In extreme cases, hypersensitive people become paralyzed in that they cannot make a decision without getting the approval of other people, and often lots of people. 4. The curse of judgmentalism. The fourth reason for negative emotions is judgmentalism, the tendency of people to judge others in a negative way. When you judge others unfavorably, you invariably find them guilty of something. This guilt becomes the justification for your anger and resentment toward them. In the Bible it says, "Judge not that ye be not judged." What this means is that when you judge others, you actually bring negativity and unhappiness upon yourself. When you judge, you are setting yourself up as someone who thinks he is superior to the other person, making him or her inferior to you. If you do not pass judgment on another for any reason, you cannot be angry with that person. It is only when you can make a good case that the other person has done or said something that has hurt you, or that person has failed to do something, that you can be angry. The starting point of eliminating judgmentalism from your life is to resolve from now on not to judge anyone else for anything, unless it is to admire and praise them. Exercise. Most often, we judge another person for something because it is something we don't like in ourselves, or we are jealous of her and want to be able to achieve or behave the way she does. The next time you find yourself passing judgment, explore the motivation. Do you dislike a similar trait in yourself? Or do you wish you could behave or achieve the way this person does? Practice detachment. The opposite of judging and condemning is the practice of detachment. Stand back from the person, remain unemotional, and rise above the situation. When you judge another, you become emotional, and emotions distort evaluations. The more you judge and condemn, the angrier and more out of control you become. If you have been brought up in a family with someone who is continually complaining about or criticizing others, you may have developed the false idea that judging and condemning others is a normal and natural thing to do. The very idea of remaining neutral and detached when someone does or says something that you don't agree with may seem strange to you at first. Another way to stay neutral is to be curious instead. It is not possible to ask questions and become angry or judgmental at the same time. Everyone you meet has a story of some kind. Sometimes you can be judgmental because you don't know the reasons for people's behavior. Ask questions, not to support your position, but to better understand where they are coming from. You will often find that the truth of the situation is completely different from what it first appeared to be. Use your mind properly. You have a wonderful mind. But it is a double-edged sword. You can use it to make you happy, or you can use it to make you angry. Your goal should be to use your intelligence to keep yourself calm, in control, and at peace, no matter what is happening around you or to you. Krishnamurti, the Indian sage, said, "My secret of success is simple. I just don't care very much about anything. When people behave poorly, refrain from judging. When people do or say things that seem to be negative and unnecessary, remain calm and detached. Stand back mentally and observe them impartially without becoming upset or involved. The best way to stop judging is to have compassion for the other person. It is almost impossible to have compassion toward another person for his behavior and judge him negatively at the same time. Even better, you can bless, forgive, and let go. Rise above it. Refuse to allow the behavior of the other person to affect you in any way. Switch your focus to something that makes you happy. In this way, you neutralize the negative thought and any tendency to judge another person. Be patient and empathetic when you deal with a difficult person. Treat him exactly as if he was a tired, hungry, irritable child becoming angry or even throwing a tantrum. You don't get angry with a child. You have compassion. You just accept that this is the way children behave at certain times under certain circumstances. Another way to refrain from judging is to remind yourself that if you were in the same situation, you might act the same. You can say, "There, but for the grace of God go I." You may also just acknowledge that all people are entitled to think and feel their own way. Allow others to express themselves the same way that you would want to be allowed to express yourself. The Sedona Method. There's a method of regaining emotional control in your life called the Sedona Method, created by Lester Levinson, in which you are asked to identify the people in your past with whom you are still angry. You also identify the situations from your past that you are still upset about, those things you did or didn't do. They then ask you two questions. First, do you want to be free of the negativity associated with this unhappy memory? If your answer is yes, then the second question is, are you willing to let it go completely? It is amazing how many people are unwilling to let go of a negative event that happened to them in the past. They feel that they have earned the pain and paid for it with time, money, and personal suffering. They feel entitled to their pain. In their heart of hearts, they are not willing to let it go. But without the willingness to do so, these people cannot be helped. Take the pencil test here as the example used in the Sedona Method. Take a pencil in your hand. Squeeze it tightly. Squeeze it even more tightly, as hard as you can. Imagine holding on tightly to this pencil for an hour, a day, a month, or even years. What would happen to your hand and arm? They would become atrophied and even immovable, paralyzed. But what happened if you clung tightly, bitterly to a negative experience for months and years? Part of your personality would be damaged with anger and bitterness. Now extend your arm and open your hand with the palm facing toward the floor while you are squeezing this pencil. Here's the question. What is holding this pencil in your hand? The answer is obvious. You are holding this pencil and squeezing it so hard. The next question is also obvious. How do you get rid of this pencil? How do you get it out of your hand? The answer is simple. You open your hand and let it fall. You let go. This is a wonderful illustration of the simplicity of dropping a negative event out of your life permanently. With the pencil, you open your hand and let it go. With a negative experience that still makes you unhappy, you open your heart and let it go. You decide your own emotions. Remember, no one makes you feel anything. No one makes you mad. Nothing that has happened to you has any control over you. No previous event, circumstance, or person can affect your emotions without your permission. It is only you who makes you feel anything, positive or negative, by the way that you interpret that past event to yourself. One of the most beautiful of all emotions is compassion. Feeling compassion towards someone means understanding the emotions that the other person is feeling and then being accepting of those emotions. When you use your wonderful mind to find reasons for not judging, for letting the other person off the hook, and for letting go of any past hurt, you take complete control of your thinking and your emotions. Instead of finding reasons why the other person is guilty and should be condemned and punished, you find reasons to find her not guilty and let her go free. Write it down and let it go. Here is a simple exercise that works for many people. Take a piece of paper and write down the names of the people whom you are still angry about. Write down the things they did that cause you to feel justified in your anger and condemnation. Then take this piece of paper, rip it up, and throw it in the trash. In this way, you can use your power of choice to let go of the hurt and pain of the past, to put it behind you, or destroy it completely so that you can enjoy the freedom and joy of the future. 5. Rationalization. The fifth cause of negative emotions is rationalization. This occurs when you use your rational mind to put a socially acceptable explanation on your own otherwise unacceptable act. You explain it away. Because of low self-esteem and weak egos, most people cannot admit that they have done or said anything that was not thoroughly reasonable and justified on their part. Even the worst criminals feel that they are innocent and merely victims of someone, something, or society. They rationalize their behaviors. Eliminate the expression of negative emotions. Peter Ouspensky, in his book In Search of the Miraculous, explained that almost all unhappiness comes from expressing negative emotions. It is the constant talking about and rehashing of a negative situation that keeps the negative emotions alive and growing. In this sense, your negative emotions can be compared to a brush fire that begins with a spark but can quickly spread out of control. But if a spark lands on dry brush and you put it out immediately, no fire starts or spreads. In the same way, if you stop the negative emotion the moment it is triggered, it quickly goes out like a small fire and causes no damage. However, if you continually talk about the cause of the negative emotion both to yourself and to others, it can soon grow out of control like a brush fire and completely overwhelm your thoughts and emotions to the exclusion of any other thoughts or feelings. You soon lose your ability to think clearly. The worst emotion of all negative emotions sooner or later come down to one: anger. Anger is the ultimate negative emotion. All fear, doubt, jealousy, envy, and resentment eventually turn into anger of some kind. This anger is then inwardly directed, making yourself physically and emotionally sick, or outwardly directed, undermining and destroying your relationships with other people. All unhappy people are angry. Depression is inwardly directed anger, caused by the inability of the person to express his or her feelings or do something about a situation openly and honestly. The attempt to discover this internal conflict is the foundation of modern psychology, going back all the way to Sigmund Freud. The primary goal of psychological counseling of any kind is to help the individual get it off his chest and let out the negative emotions and experiences that are holding him back. The primary reason for anger is that the individual feels aggressed upon, attacked, hurt, or taken advantage of by another person or persons. Anger is defensiveness rooted in sadness, a wanting to strike back at someone who has hurt you. The expression of anger. One of the worst parts of anger is that the more you express it, the angrier you become. The more you talk about, justify, and rationalize why you are entitled to be angry, the bigger the anger grows, like a brush fire. Many people have been angry for so long that they reach the point where the smallest event triggers an explosion of anger. They go through life angry. Most of the time, Soon they come to believe that a sense of anger and being taken advantage of is a normal way to think and feel. The core of anger is blame. The ability to blame someone for something that he or she has done or not done is the essential requirement for the feeling and expression of anger and negative emotions of all kinds. It is not possible to hold a negative emotion for any period of time unless you can blame someone or something for the situation you are angry about. The moment you stop blaming, the negative emotion or emotions stop completely, like turning off a light switch. Accept responsibility rather than blaming others. The antidote to negative emotions, blaming, and anger is so simple and effective that it is almost overwhelming. People who have been negative, angry, and unhappy for years can short-circuit their negative emotions almost instantly with one simple but powerful technique. Since all negative emotion is rooted in blame and anger, which means that someone else has done or not done something to make you angry or unhappy, the answer is simple. Instead of blaming, accept responsibility for the situation. When you accept complete responsibility for the situation, for whatever has happened, your negative emotions stop, like slamming on the brakes. It is impossible to accept responsibility for a situation and to simultaneously be angry or unhappy about that situation. The acceptance of responsibility cancels out all the negativity associated with the situation or person. I am responsible. How do you accept responsibility? Simple. Say the words, I am responsible. Whenever you are angry or unhappy for any reason, immediately repeat to yourself over and over, I am responsible, until the negative feeling goes away. This is an astonishing discovery that totally transforms the life of every person who practices it. Your mind can hold only one thought at a time, positive or negative. It can hold a positive emotion of personal responsibility, or it can hold a negative emotion of any kind. And the choice is always up to you. The only thing in the universe that you can control is the content of your conscious mind. If you choose to hold the thought, I am responsible, rather than the negative thought that makes you unhappy, you become positive, optimistic, and calm, sometimes in just a few seconds. Refuse to express negative feelings. As mentioned earlier, unhappiness comes from the expression of negative emotions, either internally, externally, or both. If you do not express your negative emotions, they quickly die away. From this moment onward, instead of using your incredible intelligence to think of reasons why you should be fearful, doubtful, envious, jealous, resentful, and angry because of things that have happened or not happened, use your mind to find reasons not to express your negative feelings, justifications, and rationalizations. Again, the most powerful all-purpose way to stop the expression of negative emotions is to repeat, I am responsible. Every time an event occurs that would normally trigger a negative reaction from you. Justifying and rationalizing at this point, many people say, wait a minute, there is no way that I can accept responsibility for the terrible thing this other person did to hurt me. Accepting responsibility would not be honest because I am not responsible anyway. This approach may be true. You may have been robbed, cheated, lied to, swindled, betrayed, or hurt in 1,000 ways by someone else. You may have come back to the parking lot and found that someone had driven into the side of your car and then driven away. In a case like this, you're not legally at fault and you are not to blame. However, here's the answer. You are responsible for your responses. You may not be responsible for what happened, but you are responsible for the way you behave afterward. And your responses are completely under your control. They are a matter of personal choice. Nothing makes you angry or unhappy. You make yourself angry or unhappy by the way that you choose to react to the unhappy experience. Use your willpower. In Rudyard Kipling's poem, If, he says, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, you'll be a man, my son. The mark of superior people is that they can exert their willpower and self-discipline to keep themselves calm, aware, and effective, no matter what is going on around them. All great men and women have developed the ability to remain cool under fire. But remember, emotions distort evaluations. The minute you begin to blame someone else and become angry for what has occurred, you begin to lose your ability to think clearly and decide intelligently. You become a slave to your emotions. You can very quickly become swept away and find yourself doing and saying things that you later regret. Find reasons not to express negative emotions. Use your mind to find reasons not to express negative emotions. One of the ways that you can do this is to first say, I am responsible, and then look into the situation for examples and reasons in which you might be responsible in some way for what has happened. People who go through bad relationships are often furious at the other person, sometimes for years, when the relationship or marriage breaks down. But when you say, I am responsible, and look for reasons why this may be so, you will find that you made a lot of the decisions that got you into the bad relationship in the first place. You may not be totally responsible for the actions of the other person, but you are fully responsible for everything you did or said from the beginning of the relationship to the end and to the present day. Many people become upset over a job or a business deal that goes wrong, but you are responsible. No one forced you into this situation at gunpoint. Based on your knowledge and information, or lack of knowledge, you got yourself into the situation in the first place. It did not work out as you expected. Next time you will be smarter and wiser. But for the moment, you are responsible. The law of emotion. The law of emotion says that everything you do is determined by an emotion of some kind, either positive or negative. The emotions that you think about and talk about the most soon grow and consume your entire life, for better or worse. Imagine that you have two fires burning. One is the fire of desire, and the other is the fire of negative emotions based on your interpretation of past events. You have a load of emotional firewood. You can put this wood on either fire, but if you put all the wood on one fire, what happens to the other fire? The answer is simple. If you put all of your emotions on the fire of desire and spend all your time thinking and talking about what you want and where you are going with your life, the old fire of negative emotions and experiences eventually dies out and the ashes go cold. This is the bottom line of all emotional healing. From now on, when something goes wrong for any reason, immediately say, I am responsible, and stop the negative emotion from getting started in the first place. Your great goal, Aristotle, was perhaps the greatest of the ancient philosophers. One of his major contributions was his discovery of what he thought to be the ultimate ends or goals of human behavior. He said that behind everything we do, there is another motivation, until we get back to the core motivation of all human behavior, which is to be happy. You are a happiness-seeking organism. Your primary aim in life is to be happy, however you define it. And the very best measure of happiness is how much peace of mind you enjoy, and how often you enjoy it. Peace of mind is the highest human good. The very best moments of your life are those when you feel completely at peace with yourself, with other people, and with the world. Your goal is to do everything possible to achieve and attain these feelings of peace and happiness. When you do this, everything in your life tends to work out for the better. Exercise. Think of the times when you felt the most content, happy, and relaxed. Where were you? Whom were you with? What was it about the situation that made you happy? How could you duplicate that experience on a regular basis? Locus of control. There are more than 50 years of research into what is called locus of control theory. In these studies, people are divided into two categories: those who have an internal locus of control and those who have an external locus of control. An internal locus of control is experienced when the individual feels that she is in complete charge of her thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. An internal locus of control is closely associated with happiness, optimism, high energy, good health, positive relationships, and success in life. An external locus of control is experienced when the individual feels that he has little or no control over his life, that he is controlled by other people or circumstances. An external locus of control is closely associated with feelings of distress, depression, frustration, helplessness, and inferiority. People with an external locus of control tend to feel negative, pessimistic, and angry. They are more susceptible to psychosomatic illnesses, depression, and problems in relationships. Whenever you're blaming someone else for something in your life, you are giving that person control over your emotions. You're giving up your peace of mind to that other person. You're putting that other person, rather than yourself, in control of your happiness. Take control of your emotions. The key to developing an internal locus of control, to taking complete charge of yourself and your life, is to firmly state, I am responsible. Whenever you feel like lashing out or blaming someone else for anything, there is a direct relationship between the amount of responsibility you accept for yourself, your feelings, and your life, and the amount of control you feel you have over what happens to you. At the same time, there is a direct relationship between how much control you feel you have and positive emotions. Finally, there is a direct relationship between responsibility, control, and positive emotions on the one hand, and how happy you feel on the other hand. The more you accept responsibility for every part of your life, the happier, more positive, and more optimistic you will feel. Your mental, physical, and emotional energies will be directed outward on accomplishment, on making your life into something wonderful, and on realizing your full potential. Shed feelings of guilt and unworthiness. There is a special area of personal negativity that holds you back from becoming everything you are capable of becoming, and that is feelings of guilt. Children are born with no feelings of guilt. Every guilty feeling that you experience as an adult was taught to you by your parents, siblings, and others as you were growing up. And because feelings of guilt have been learned, they can be unlearned as well. Parents usually use guilt on their children because it was used on them by their parents and often by their grandparents. The practice of guilt throwing goes back through the generations. It almost becomes automatic with some people and in some families and religions. The impact of negative religion. There are churches that practice what I call negative religion. In these churches and certain other schools of thought, including large aspects of socialism and communism, guilt is used systematically and deliberately to undermine positive emotions, destroy personalities, and make people easily controllable by the person who is casting the guilt on everyone else. When guilt is practiced deliberately, it is used for two purposes: control and manipulation. Throughout the centuries, people and parents have found that if you can make others feel guilty about something, you can easily control their emotions. If you can control their emotions, you can then manipulate them into doing or not doing what you want. Guilt is an insidious and evil emotion used exclusively to get people to do what the guilt inducer wants by destroying their sense of self-worth and lowering their resistance to being controlled by others. The harm of withholding love. In an earlier section, we touched upon how children frequently become susceptible to feelings of constant guilt as a result of destructive criticism or lack of love they experience early in their lives, often at the hands of their parents, siblings, or other authority figures they trust. When children are told that they are no good or stupid, a disappointment to their parents, or not very smart or competent, they naturally begin to develop feelings of unworthiness and inferiority. They think to themselves the destructive words, "I'm not good enough," and "it must be my fault." When children are continually criticized as they are growing up, they soon begin to criticize themselves. This self-criticism manifests in negative comparisons with others. All around them, they see people who are doing better than they are, whether it is in sports, academics, or social activities. And they feel guilty for not being as able as their peers in all aspects of their lives. Because they have feelings of inferiority, they conclude naturally that if someone is doing better than they are in a specific area, that person must therefore be better than they are as well. From worthless to worthless, after negatively comparing oneself with others for so long, the guilt-ridden person concludes, if someone else is doing better than I am, that person must be worth more than I am. If that person is worth more, then I must be worth less. And it's only a small step from thinking you are worth less than someone else to believing you are worthless entirely. For this reason, feelings of guilt almost inevitably lead to feelings of worthlessness. A person who feels worthless, diminished, and of little value becomes insecure, pessimistic, angry, and dissatisfied. Among the prison population today, for example, the worst offenders and those serving the longest terms have zero sense of responsibility and zero self-esteem. Many of them can clearly remember their fathers or mothers telling them things such as, "You are no good. Someday you will end up in prison." Feelings of guilt and inferiority lead very quickly to a person seeing herself as a victim of life, circumstances, fate, society, and numerous other factors. This feeling is expressed in the words, "I'm not good enough." The individual continually compares herself with others and says, "I am not smart enough. I'm not talented enough. I'm not competent enough. I'm no good. I can't. I can't. I can't." Feeling guilty also often leads to needing to take care of someone else's needs or feelings before taking care of your own. People seek out permission or approval before making a decision. Guilt throwers and guilt catchers for more than 2,000 years, guilt has been a fundamental principle in Judeo-Christian culture. It has been used over the centuries for manipulation and control of individuals and populations who have been made to feel guilty. Guilt is useful in soliciting charitable or religious contributions and eliciting obedience. Much of society is made up of people who are guilt throwers and those who are guilt catchers. Guilt throwers have mastered the ability to make people, often complete strangers, feel guilty in just a few seconds. Guilt catchers are easily made to feel guilty by guilt throwers. Since opposites often attract in the area of temperament, many little guilt throwers grow up and marry guilt catchers, repeating their family dynamic as adults. Exercise. If you can't directly confront someone who makes you feel guilty, try sitting in front of an empty chair and imagine that the other person is sitting there. Tell him how you feel and that you refuse to feel guilty anymore. Tell him that he will now have to assume responsibility for his own life, feelings, and experiences. You are going to take care of yourself. If it helps, put a picture of the person on the other chair. Or you can even ask a friend or partner to role play with you. Avoid the victim language trap. Once a person develops feelings of guilt, unworthiness, and inferiority, he or she continues to reinforce those feelings by using victim language. The majority of what you think and feel about yourself is determined by the way you talk to yourself, your inner dialogue throughout the day. The inner dialogue of guilt-ridden people who see themselves as victims is full of complaining, criticizing, and blaming others. People who feel like victims continually make excuses. When you ask them for something, they often say, "I'll try," or "I'll do my best," which is essentially an excuse for failure in advance. It's not remotely empowering or motivating for a person who feels like a victim, and it induces serious doubt and distrust in the person who's making the request. Whenever someone says these words when you ask them to do something, you know that they likely are going to fail and disappoint. And they know it too. They are continually offering up justifications and explanations for not trying, not achieving goals, not being punctual, not fulfilling their responsibilities, and not doing the job that they were hired to do. They always have a reason or an excuse because they always see themselves as a victim. Nothing is ever their fault. This also means they have no ownership of their ability to succeed and no control over the outcome of anything they attempt. By assuming they will fail before they even try, they are creating a self-fulfilling prophecy that makes it all but impossible to achieve what they want or what they need to do. Achievers do the opposite. They believe they will achieve successful results and then they go after them. You can't succeed if you don't even try. Criticizing and complaining are usually forms of victim language as well. When you criticize and complain, you position yourself as a victim of those about whom you are criticizing and complaining in the first place. As a result, this makes you feel inferior and insecure. Eliminate feelings of guilt. There are 4 steps that you can take to unlearn the feelings of guilt that may have been programmed into you from an early age. 1. From this moment on, never criticize yourself for anything. Practice self-compassion. Never say anything to yourself about yourself that you do not sincerely want to be true. Remember, the most powerful words in your vocabulary are those you say to yourself and believe. Make sure that they are positive and upbeat. The very best words that you can say to yourself over and over are, "I like myself," "I can do it," and "I am responsible." It is impossible to repeat these affirmations and feel negative or guilty at the same time. 2. Refuse to criticize anyone else for anything that they do or say. Eliminate destructive criticism from your vocabulary altogether. Be the kind of person from whom never is heard a discouraging word. Make it a habit to be curious and to continually seek out positive things in other people and comment on them. Whenever you say anything nice to another person for any reason, you raise his or her self-esteem, and your own self-esteem goes up in equal measure. 3. Refuse to use guilt on other people for any reason. Abolish the use of guilt-laden words and phrases from your vocabulary and from your interactions with your family and friends. Never try to make a person feel guilty for something that he or she has done or not done. The greatest gifts you can give another person are those of unconditional love and acceptance. This means that you never criticize her for anything that she does or doesn't do. You praise, approve, or at the very least remain silent. 4. Refuse to be manipulated by guilt coming from someone else. From this day forward, reject any attempt to make you feel guilty for any reason. If your mother, father, or spouse tries to make you feel guilty, simply ask, "You're not trying to make me feel guilty, are you?" and remain silent. Very few people will admit outright that they are attempting to manipulate another person by using guilt. They will say something like, "Of course not." If you ask, "Are you trying to make me feel guilty?" and the other person responds, "Yes, I am," you simply say, "Well, it's not going to work." It is absolutely amazing what happens when you tell people who are accustomed to manipulating you by using guilt that it's not going to work anymore. They may be angry and confused at first, but as they realize that the throwing of guilt has no effect on your behavior, they will begin to change and communicate with you in a more positive way. Try it and see. Your great goal in life must be the elimination of negative emotions of all kinds. In the absence of negative emotions, only positive emotions will fill your mind. The two most powerful positive emotion builders are the phrases, "I like myself," and "I am responsible." Say them repeatedly. The more you like yourself, the more responsibility you accept. The more responsibility you accept, the more you like yourself. Each feeds on and reinforces the other. Discover your meaning and purpose. Viktor Frankl, the founder of logotherapy and the author of the book Man's Search for Meaning, said that the need for meaning and purpose is the deepest of our motivations. True meaning and purpose come only when you are busy doing something that makes a difference in the lives of other people. There's a direct relationship between your level of self-esteem, how much you like yourself, and how much you feel that you are making a contribution to your world. People who feel they are making a difference, that they are putting in more than they are taking out, feel happy, strong, and very much in control of their lives. The only real antidote to negative emotions, worry, fear, and guilt is to get so busy doing something that you enjoy and that benefits others in some way, that you no longer have any time to think about things that might have made you unhappy in the past. Motivational radio host and author of The Strangest Secret, Earl Nightingale, once said, "Happiness is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal." True happiness, positive emotions, and feelings of optimism and elation come when you feel that you are moving step by step in the direction of doing, being, and accomplishing something important in your life. When you eliminate the negative emotions, all that is left are the positive emotions. Fortunately, you can unlearn negative emotions with practice. Then only positive emotions will grow and eventually guide and direct everything you do.